It has become an all-too-routine journalistic exercise. Massive coverage of another mass shooting featuring tributes to the victims, harrowing tales from people who escaped, and inevitably a look at the killer's identity and MO, which puts the media in an awkward spot. How do you explain what makes someone kill without spreading their hate?
Shots rang out at the end of the Gilroy Garlic Festival, sending people scrambling for safety.
And ultimately taking 3 lives.
25-year-old Trevor Irby, 13-year-old Kayla Salazar, and Stephen Romero, who was just 6 years old.
It didn't take long to come up with clues about the killer's motives. Before the shooting, he made a telling book recommendation on Instagram.
The caption recommends reading a white supremacist book.
But while some outlets pointedly avoided naming the book in question, others took a very different tack.
If you were to go on 4chan and people were talking about Mein Kampf, for example, or the Turner Diaries, which is another big white nationalist manifesto, they would also talk about might is right. It's about combat. It's about how the only way for your race to survive is to fight for it physically.
That approach helps us understand the killer's worldview, which FBI Director Christopher Wray recently said poses a significant threat.
A majority of the cases that we've investigated are motivated by white supremacist violence.
But it also carries a risk.
This particular book is something that is not very well known by the public.
Joan Donovan researches media manipulation at Harvard's Shorenstein Center. She says that in cases like this, the press should proceed with extreme caution.
Mass violence is often a way to provoke media attention. So the media is actually being manipulated into sharing and spreading that message by showing his social media posts to their audience.
And right now, the book the killer wants people to read is an Amazon bestseller in multiple categories. Damned if we don't, damned if we do. This is a really tough one, and I don't know what the answer is because, again, to talk about our cultural and historical moment, I think it's essential that you understand the toxic arguments that are out there floating around, driving some of the horrible stuff we see happening. And yet, I genuinely don't know if the inadvertent publicizing of this is worth, I don't know, maybe the finer grain detail. Maybe you don't name something by title, but you describe what the contents are, which NBC News did in at least one piece. What do you guys think?
If the gatekeeping role of the media were intact, if it meant anything, then I would say, yes, maybe this stuff shouldn't be publicized. We shouldn't be reporting it in every case, certainly not as much as we do. But what it comes down to is that we're kind of pretending that we're able to keep this information out of people's hands. It's all over 4chan. It's all over 8chan. It's all over the dark web, where people who are interested in this stuff go and share this toxic information. I don't think that very many people who were worried about becoming copycats, if anybody, is finding out about it on the NBC Nightly News. They're finding out about it in these dark corners of the internet, and I don't think we should worry about it, about our responsibility that much as a result.
I think there are degrees. I think that saying he was promoting this particular book is one degree. I think sharing his social media, if he had a certain message or statement that he wanted to make, I think that's a higher, more dangerous degree. And then you have full-on showing video of the shooting, showing the anything that the shooter himself made to promote the shooting, as you had in Australia, and publishing manifestos. Those kind of things are a different, even more dangerous degree. I don't think we need to share their rationale and their reasoning in their own words, but I think that it's important to explain to the general public, this could inform you, this could explain to you why they did this. That said, I think you're right. Anyone who is looking for that content can find that content and probably already has found that content. And we're not linking to this book on Amazon in spite of how well it's doing there. There are people who have searched for, have found, and have already read this stuff, saying that this person who is now being vilified is part of that group. I don't think we're expanding the group by saying that.
I think, in their own words, is one of the keys here. Clearly, this is something we're going to have to deal with weekly or monthly anyway. These kinds of stories unfortunately. And I think the guiding principle for journalists still has to be transparency. When you write about something, you've got to make sure that people understand what it is that's behind it. And I think you can talk about something like Might is Right in a way that explains to people what this is, what the motivation is, certainly paraphrasing. You don't give people phrases that are plugs for that point of view, but you probably wouldn't do that on the other side too. I think transparency is what every editor and every reporter should be thinking about, making sure that the public understands it, not by avoiding it, but by putting it in the right context.
Well, and that's a case where we tend to not want to pass judgment in allegedly objective news reporting. But in a case like this, I feel like it's okay to pass judgment. Say, he advocated reading this tract, which is a white supremacist, misogynistic, pro-violence, whatever. Use terms that are pejorative because they happen to be accurate.
You paraphrase Mein Kampf.
I think there are two audiences. One is the 4chan group that you mentioned, but the other audience is folks like myself. Well, what happened? Well, why? And so you want to explain that, but that can be done with the kind of care that we would hope that responsible journalists would do, which is to say, here's what the book is about and why he was promoting it, and this was the motivation. To Roy's point, you don't have to go to say, and in chapter 5, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to have all that. But I did, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Why? Who would do that? So that is helpful.
And you don't have to link to it.
You do not link to it, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.